Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. One elder woman from the neighborhood immediately stepped forward, grabbed her, and demanded they go to see the magistrate. Seeing the magistrate was yet another layer of hell. The celestial magistrate dispatched the bailiff clerk to investigate. What Duongshi had said was not wrong. The old man stroked his goatee, without the least regard for my suffering, and immediately convicted me of the crime of false accusation, sentencing me to 20 strokes of the board. Before I suffered punishment, I saw Duongshi remove her bracelet and secretly slip it to the celestial magistrate. The elder woman from the neighborhood embraced me and wept, saying that she had caused me to suffer. Before I lost consciousness, I begged the elder woman to go find Lady Chu of the Fuwei Escort Bureau, and not to let my parents come take me home. I didn't know how long I had slept. When I woke, my throat felt as though it would crack open, my head ached, my throat ached, my backside ached. That bailiff clerk had shown no mercy, my backside had been beaten to a pulp. Han, you're awake. Suddenly a joyful cry rang out beside my ear. Stewardly, quickly bring the porridge from the stove. I struggled to turn my head. My gaze fell upon Lady Chu's delighted face. She brought warm water and dipped her fingers in it, gently dabbing my lips. This girl endured such a great injustice without coming to find me first. That old county magistrate is greedy for money, but old Nyang here has money. In a little while I'll let that vile woman know what I'm made of. Lady Chu's words fell on my ears and the floodgates of emotion completely broke open. My lips trembled, tears streaming down like a burst dam. Lady Chu, they all lied to me, my poor Han, how you have suffered. Seeing me so heartbroken, Lady Chu's eyes reddened too. She hastily pulled out a handkerchief and wiped my face. She turned her head and cursed, denouncing the entire household of Butcher Duong as good-for-nothings. Taking advantage of your being young and innocent, they bullied you to this extent. Over these past few days I've looked into things clearly. That vile woman only signed a deed of temporary bondage. From the very beginning she planned to swindle you. The escort guards of the Bureau already know everything. Over these past few days they've been walking back and forth in front of her door, frightening that vile woman so badly she doesn't dare step outside. Wait for Lu Chuan to return, he'll write her a letter of dismissal and see if she dares cause any more trouble. Lady Chu grew more heated with every word, her fierce and indignant manner making me finally burst out laughing from the bottom of my heart. She was the knight-errant, she was the hero. This world was not yet entirely hopeless. Stewardly carried a bowl of porridge in and scolded Lady Chu. Han has been unconscious for 6 days and just woke up, and you're here making a commotion. Master Bureau head just came looking for you. Go see him quickly. I was startled. I had slept 6 days. Stewardly nodded, her face filled with shock. Don't you know the state of your own body? You were already weak. By the time we arrived, you were breathing out more than you were breathing in. Fortunately Lady Chu still had an aged ginseng root. That's what pulled you back from the brink. The doctor said if you didn't wake within 3 days, we'd have to prepare for the worst. My eyes grew moist as I looked at Lady Chu, who was already heading out. Lady Chu, she raised her index finger and shook it back and forth. Old Nyang saved you because old Nyang was happy to. If you feel guilty, just consider it repaying a favor from years past. Lu Chuan once saved my husband's life. He saved my husband, I saved his wife. We're even. Don't you dare say we're even. This kindness I will remember forever. I had always longed for the Jianghu. and it turned out I had always been in the Jianghu all along. The people within the Jianghu were all magnanimous and passionate. One bowl of porridge I hadn't even finished, and I already heard Lady Chu's voice calling in from outside. "Han, Lu Chuan is back." The moment the words faded, a dark figure came rushing through the door toward me. Several strands of hair at Lu Chuan's temples were wet, plastered flat to his forehead. Those amber eyes, normally so strong and full of vitality, were now shot through with red. His whole body was caked in road dust, showing he must have galloped a very long way. His features were handsome, broad shoulders, narrow waist, and normally his bearing alone was brilliant. Now he looked somewhat haggard. He raised his hands, wanting to hold me, but my whole body was covered in wounds. I looked so thin that a light touch might cause me to shatter, and he didn't know what to do. In the end, his hand came to rest on top of my head. "Han, I came back too late. The day of my misfortune, the escort bureau had dispatched another escort guard to take Lu Chuan's place so he could return." Lady Chu added details with embellishment from the doorway. "Exactly. If not for Han's great fortune, she would have been murdered by your legitimate wife. You'd only have been left to mourn at her grave." Lu Chuan sat by the bedside, the muscles in his jaw faintly moving. A coldness appeared in his eyes that I had never seen before. "All the debts they owe Han, I will collect every last one." The next morning, Stewardly reported to me that in the middle of the night, a fire had suddenly broken out in our small courtyard. Duangshi wept and begged people to help put it out, but everyone only looked on coldly. Afterward, they mocked her, saying she deserved it for harming her own younger sister, truly enraging the heavens. It was not until the night patrol bailiffs happened to pass by that they stopped to help extinguish the flames. Duangshi had been sleeping soundly. The fire had burned so close that it singed her hair before the pain woke her. Had that not happened, she might have burned alive in the sea of flames. Though her life was preserved, her appearance was completely destroyed. Duangshi, who had always loved beauty, living like this was worse than death for her. I looked at Lu Chuan, who was bringing my medicine to feed me, and asked softly, "Was this you?" He shook his head with a faint smile. "Not me. I only set fire to the county yamen." I was stunned. Stewardly was astonished. "The county yamen truly did burn down last night. I heard the entire room that stored the household registration records was reduced to ash." A catastrophe this large means the county magistrate has no hope of promotion anymore. Weddings, funerals, and the household registry, now nothing but a handful of cold ash. I suddenly grew anxious, ignoring the wounds on my body, struggling to sit up. The county magistrate will suffer such a great loss. He'll certainly investigate to the end to find who set the fire. "If it comes back to you, then," Lu Chuan gently handed the medicine bowl to Stewardly, then pressed me back down, his tone calm and steady. "He has no opportunity for that. I had originally planned to deal with Duangshi first and then take you away. But today I received word from one of my escort guards. We must go sooner than planned." At noon, the northern and southern gates quietly opened. From the northern gate, a caravan of vehicles stealthily left the city. At the southern gate, the guard on duty weighed the pouch of silver in his hand and said quietly, "Go now, don't cause me any trouble." I lay still on the soft bed that had been fitted inside the carriage, not daring to make a sound. Not until the horses drove onto the main road and the wheels rolled steadily through the night did I breathe a long sigh of relief. I didn't know whether, by the next day, the people of Taoyuan County would realize that the Fuwei Escort Bureau had disbanded overnight. Thinking back on everything that had happened in the past half-month, I still felt as though I were dreaming. This morning, after Lu Chuan announced we had to leave earlier than expected, he had gone to bid farewell to the bureau's chief manager. Lady Chu had still tried to persuade him to stay. "I don't ask why you're leaving," but Han just barely held on to her life. How can she endure the hardships of the road? Lu Chuan's gaze lingered on me for a moment, carrying several shades of worry. After sitting in silence over a cup of tea, he said decisively, "We cannot delay. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. The world is about to fall into chaos. It's time for all of you to start thinking of another way forward." The escort mission this time was to An Prefecture, the territory of Prince Xian, the current emperor's half-brother by the same mother. Setting out from Taoyuan County and traveling along the main road, they would pass through 4 prefectures and 12 counties. As they went further south, something felt increasingly wrong. The first day it wasn't clear, but by the third day, Lu Chuan suddenly noticed that the further south they went, the more beggars there were. This was a very bad omen. Very possibly the south had already fallen into chaos. Before Lu Chuan could confirm it, the escort guard who had taken over his duties had caught up to deliver news. Yesterday, guards under his command had sent word that they had encountered mountain bandits who robbed the cargo. In the process, they had rescued a person, someone they all recognized, the young master of the Tian family. The whole group crowded around to read the escort guard's letter, their expressions growing increasingly grave. The young Tian master had been frightened by the mountain bandits into utter witlessness. To beg for his life, he had confessed everything. The Tian family was not an ordinary landowner's household. The entire family had fled under cover of night because they had offended someone, and this someone was one they dared not even think about, the current emperor himself. Taoyuan County was situated between the capital and An Prefecture, a supremely strategic location, a necessary passage for all merchant caravans traveling north and south. With so many merchants passing through, escort bureaus were plentiful, and naturally things that needed to be hidden, gathering strength in secret, could easily be transported back and forth without discovery. In our eyes, the Tian family had appeared to be nothing more than a wealthy household that had moved to the town over 10 years ago. They had concealed themselves too well. Ordinary subjects like us had no way of suspecting that the legitimate eldest daughter of the main Tian family line was the noble consort of Prince Xian's household. With this connection, they were bound together on the same rope. The Tian family had an unwritten rule: the main line held official positions, the secondary line made money. The branch in Taoyuan County was only a secondary branch of the Tian family, naturally serving as Prince Xian's purse, secretly helping him drill troops and train horses. Shipments from the Tian family going north traded in silk and jewels, while those going south moved box after box of silver and gold bullion. Even the cart horses of the southern merchant caravans were war horses smuggled in from the northwestern border. But there is no wall in this world that can block the wind. Supporting a royal prince in raising private soldiers was a crime of the 9 exterminations. The previous year, the movements of the main Tian family line had been exposed. The secondary branch in Taoyuan County heard the news and hastily took the entire family and fled south, hoping to find shelter in Prince Xian's territory. Who would have thought they'd meet mountain bandits halfway? The young master's horse panicked and bolted away from the convoy. Had the bandits not wanted to use the young master to extort ransom from the Tian family, he might not have survived long enough to be rescued by the escort team. By this time, the main branch of the Tian family in the capital had all been marched to the execution grounds. Even the women who had already married out could not escape the calamity. The emperor's actions were like thunderclaps, clearly presenting Prince Xian with 2 choices. First, Return to the capital and admit guilt. Second, decisively turn against the Son of Heaven. Prince Xian had schemed for so many years, the outcome was already clear. The first territory to be used as a pawn was Huayin Commandery, adjacent to An Prefecture. Prince Xian slaughtered all of Huayin Commandery to offer its blood as sacrifice to the spirits of the fallen Tian family main line. The prince and the court fought, and it was the common people who were sacrificed. The world was about to fall into chaos, and Taoyuan County would certainly be caught in it. The bureau master immediately decided they must go, that very night, slip away in the dark, take the horses and carriages and go. At this time, those who could run faster would survive more. No matter what, they had to flee to somewhere near the capital before they could be considered safe. The bureau master and Lady Chu prepared to lead the escort bureau north. But Lu Chuan had his own calculations. He wanted to go south. Lady Chu asked me, if I felt the south was too dangerous and didn't want to go, I could go north with them. The people of Fuwei Escort Bureau were all good-hearted, kind souls. I understood too that if they brought along someone as sickly as me, they would not be able to run fast. They had already saved my life once. I absolutely could not let them be further burdened by me. Besides, I trusted Lu Chuan. For my sake, he had dared to burn down the county yamen. How could he not dare to take one great risk together with me? The affinity between people, isn't it built up from every great and small thing that happens between them? And at the same time, affinity between people also dissolves away, little by little, through every act of betrayal. In short, the Fuwei Escort Bureau went north, while I and Lu Chuan went south, slipping silver to the gate guards. Using the cover of darkness to leave Taoyuan County, Lu Chuan drove the horses galloping along the main road, glancing back occasionally to check whether I could hold on. Looking at the sky brightening gradually in the east, I suddenly remembered something. Big Brother Chuan, we have no guide. How will we get into the city? My words had barely fallen when I felt the carriage sway and come to a stop. Lu Chuan had abruptly reined in the horses. My whole body ached as though it had been pounded apart. I struggled to sit up, lifted the carriage curtain, and asked, Big Brother Chuan, what's wrong? The question froze in my throat. From my hands to my feet, I could not help but tremble. Ahead on the road, a row of sharp palisades had been stretched across from side to side. From the forest on either side of the road stepped more than 10 men carrying weapons, their expressions fierce. They moved like lightning, instantly surrounding our carriage. How unlucky could one be, to run into mountain bandits right on the main road? Big Brother Chuan, I gripped the back of his jacket tightly. You pose as a cart driver and slip away first. I'll think of a way to stall them. I can't run anymore, not after the 20 strokes from the magistrate's office damaged my sinews and bones. Mountain bandits were nothing more than robbers, of valuables, or of women. If Big Brother Chuan left me behind, perhaps there would still be a chance to escape with his life. I couldn't run any faster, I was like a broken doll. I hoped these mountain bandits had high standards and would grant me a clean and quick end. In a flash, 1,000 ways of dying played out in my mind. The more I thought, the more miserable it felt. Hick, Big Brother Chuan, in our next life, let us be husband and wife again. Lu Chuan turned his head to look at me, my face streaked with tears, barely daring to weep out loud. He suddenly burst out laughing. Someone with this little courage still wants to be a wandering heroine, the cicada's lament? At a time like this, brother is still. Did you get scared silly? Big Brother Chuan, the ringleader of the mountain bandits, held a great broadsword as tall as a man. his face full of flesh, his expression arrogant and domineering, his hair bundled carelessly atop his head. He grinned and approached us, baring his teeth. "Brother, why is the little sister-in-law here crying?" Lu Chuan reached over and wiped the tears from my face, letting out a cold laugh. "Your lot are too ugly. You frightened her into crying." I had nearly forgotten. Lu Chuan had sworn brotherhood with a gang of mountain bandits. That gang of mountain bandits, or rather, those gallant outlaws of the Greenwood, ceremoniously produced a soft sedan chair from the forest and carried me up to the mountain stronghold. Above the main gate of the stronghold hung several large characters, probably the name of the place. Unfortunately, I couldn't read them. Every time before going on an escort mission, would do the counting while Lady Chu kept the records. I heard them say the place was called Qingshan Stronghold. The stronghold was larger than I had imagined. Inside were people of all ages, old and young, men and women, and it looked no different from a village. I was given a spacious wooden house. The elder woman who made up the bed, seeing I was injured, carefully added an extra thick mattress. I lay sideways on the bed and felt, as if in a dream, that life was indeed like a stage play. I had never once imagined that one day I would be staying in a mountain bandit's lair, nor could I ever have imagined that an escort guard like Lu Chuan would become a mountain bandit. And me, I who had dreamed of being a knight-errant since childhood, had ended up as the villain of the story, but none of that mattered anymore. As long as one was alive, what did it matter to be the villain? The stronghold had excellent medicinal supplies for wounds. 1 month later, I was already able to run about and help the elder women with small tasks. Here, regardless of whether one was male or female, anyone who knew martial arts had to follow the band down the mountain to rob escort convoys. The elderly, weak, women, and children who knew no martial arts stayed in the stronghold to handle miscellaneous affairs. They only targeted the convoys of corrupt officials and merchant caravans, especially those transporting grain. Whenever there was intelligence, Lu Chuan would lead people down the mountain. At first, some people were dissatisfied with Lu Chuan. Escort guards and mountain bandits were natural enemies, sworn adversaries. But after just 2 descents from the mountain alongside him, everyone began calling him Big Brother Chuan. The chief of the stronghold was the man who had once nearly had his throat cut by Lu Chuan. Over the years, Lu Chuan had maintained contact with him, so it was entirely natural that Lu Chuan now became the military advisor of the stronghold. Whatever the advisor said, to steal grain, to steal weapons, the chief didn't understand, but he listened. The grain storage at the back of the stronghold was always packed full. On evenings when there was nothing to do, Lu Chuan would teach me how to use a dagger, not to wound anyone, but for self-defense. The chief would even joke, "Big brother, our stronghold now controls 50 li in all directions. How could anyone harm the sister-in-law?" But afterward, he stopped making those jokes. Chaos had erupted at the foot of the mountain. The first news we heard was from Taoyuan County. At first the county magistrate fled, then bandits from some unknown mountain came down to plunder the common people. Lu Chuan told the chief not to come down the mountain. The chief didn't understand, but he listened. Later, he praised Lu Chuan's foresight as almost supernatural. Not only Taoyuan County, but all the surrounding towns as well failed to escape the devastation of the raiding bands. Some officials bravely tried to hold their cities, but within a few days they were found hanged to death in their homes. Scouts came back down the mountain with reports. The lucky survivors among the common people were all fleeing north. The foot of the mountain was like an escape from purgatory. It was feared that before long there would be people eating people. The towns had emptied. Prince Xian, in the name of suppressing bandits, easily seized several nearby towns, including Taoyuan County. Without expending a shred of effort, he expanded his territory by several dozen li. With the grain reserves of Qingshan's stronghold, the stronghold escaped one calamity without being noticed by Prince Xian. Prince Xian dispatched his own men as the new county magistrate, though only scattered beggars and fleeing refugees who had been refused in the south remained in the city. At least it was more settled than before. 3 months passed. The provisions stored in the stronghold were nearly exhausted. Lu Chuan asked me if I wanted to go down the mountain for a visit. Yes. After I recovered, Lu Chuan and I had consummated our marriage. Perhaps staying in the stronghold for so long had rubbed off some of the mountain bandits' air onto us. That day there was a wedding celebration in the stronghold, and I had a bit too much to drink. Come evening, I cornered Lu Chuan in the room. Cornered is not quite accurate, to be precise. I had put something in his drink. Heh. When handing over the medicine, the chief had even given me a thumbs up in praise. Though I had used a tactic, I was very satisfied with the result. In Lu Chuan's heart, there was me. In his delirium, the name he called out was Han. When I took off his outer robe, he slapped himself awake, realized it was truly me, and said through gritted teeth, Han, are you truly without regrets? The corners of his eyes were reddened, his gaze brimming with something that made one's heart melt. How could anyone bear that? I bit his lip. The bite was reckless and fierce, and only when the taste of blood filled my mouth did I realize I had bitten his lip bloody. He turned over, reclaiming the initiative. That bustling little town. People coming and going, neighbors laughing and chatting everywhere. Tea houses and taverns packed year-round, a group of children circling a fruit stall and drooling with longing while the vendor, both annoyed and amused, would break a few crisp pear slices to give them. That was Taoyuan County. Now, Taoyuan County was nothing but a scene of desolation and ruin. The city gates were chipped and missing half a panel. The blue stone road was soaked in dried bloodstains that could not be washed clean no matter what. Everywhere were collapsed walls and fallen houses. Along the streets, a scattered few figures, gaunt bodies, tattered clothing, wandered aimlessly, their eyes vacant. When they looked at me and Lu Chuan, their gaze flickered with a feral glint, but they were held back by the great broadsword at Lu Chuan's hip, and retreated with sullen resentment. The county magistrate dispatched by Prince Xian had barricaded the yamen gates shut, eyes closed and ears plugged to the heartbreaking scenes within the city. He only needed to keep his head down in the yamen and wait for Prince Xian to accomplish his great ambition. Then he could use these merits to climb the ladder of officialdom. But the infighting of those on high was precisely the annihilating catastrophe for the common people. Han, is that a Han? From behind a crumbled wall in the corner, a hoarse voice rang out. I turned my head and looked, only saw an old woman wrapped in tattered clothing, poking her head out from behind the fallen wall. Looking carefully, I finally recognized her. It was the elder aunt who had once been our neighbor. One of her eyes had gone blind, her body covered in wounds. She glanced around cautiously, then carefully asked, Han, Brother Chuan, did you two bring anything to eat? I gave her 2 pieces of dry rations, then asked what had happened in Taoyuan County after we left. Not long after we departed, on the following day, someone discovered that the Fuwei Escort Bureau's doors had not opened. That person was Duong Shi. Her appearance had been ruined until she could hardly be seen in public. Her little brother wouldn't stop crying, and her parents wouldn't let her through the door. She had no choice but to try every means of clinging to Lu Chuan, but when she discovered the Fuwei Escort Bureau was empty of anyone, she immediately collapsed in front of the county yamen and wept and begged the magistrate to make decisions on her behalf. At that time, the household registration room in the yamen had already been burned to nothing. The county magistrate had no attention to spare for her, and ordered the bailiffs to drive her away. That day, the crowd watching the spectacle all heard the county magistrate shout from within the yamen, "You were nothing but a concubine of the Tian household, and you dare to pretend to be a proper wife? Old master hasn't even settled accounts with you lot for running away, and you still have the face to come here to find your husband? Get out." Some of the onlookers felt that something was off. The Tian family and the escort bureau had both fled in succession. This surely boded no good. Only half a month later, the first gang of raiders attacked Taoyuan County. Those still alive scrambled to find escape routes. The elder aunt had initially joined a group of people fleeing north. Among them were my parents, who held my little brother in their arms. There was no sign of second uncle or his wife, their fate unknown. Elder aunt went further and further and began to feel that something was wrong. The dry rations were already not plentiful, and when they were eaten, they ate grass. When the grass was gone, they stripped bark from trees. When the bark was gone, they ate dirt, until one day, they suddenly had meat to eat. The one leading the group said it was mutton, but my father stirred the pot with a branch and immediately shouted, "This is human flesh." What happened after that? Elder aunt recounted that the following morning, she no longer saw my father. My mother had gone mad and vacant, clutching an empty bag as she straggled behind the group. The group's leader showed no concern. Occasionally he would even stop and wait for my mother to catch up before moving on. Elder aunt, seeing the bloodshot eyes of those at the front, finally realized that she and they were not companions weathering the same disaster at all. They had turned the elderly and weak in the group into food. In the middle of the night, elder aunt crept away, not daring to flee north anymore. She gritted her teeth and turned back toward Taoyuan County. Before she had gone far, she discovered someone following behind her. Her back immediately broke out in a cold sweat, her legs trembling. She thought she had been discovered by those men. Who would have thought that when she turned her head, she saw only my mother, saliva drooling down her chin, following behind. Before, mother had always asked passers-by whether they had seen her husband and son. But this time, she silently followed elder aunt. Elder aunt, unable to abandon her and feeling that my mother still had great fortune and was not yet at the end of her road, tore a strip of cloth from her own garments and bound them together. Walking on, they wandered everywhere, and finally encountered Prince Xian's troops clearing out the bandits, and so returned to Taoyuan County. Elder aunt led us to her home. Her small house had been nearly entirely destroyed. Beside it was the house I had shared with Lu Chuan, now nothing but charred ruins. Elder aunt struggled to remove a broken door panel from the ground. Beneath it was a hidden cellar. She called into the pitch-dark opening, "Older sister, come out. Ahan is still alive." The person inside was frightened half to death. No matter how she called, they dared not come out. In the end, it was only when elder aunt used dry rations as a lure that the person slowly crawled out. My mother's hair had been shaved clean off. One of her legs was lame. Her eyes were entirely blank and confused. She lunged forward and snatched the dry rations from elder aunt's hands. Frantically stuffing them into her chest, "Don't steal, none of you steal. All of this is saved for my child." "Where is my child?" Has my child eaten yet? Elder Aunt refused to come back to the stronghold with us. She was afraid of mountain bandits. I left her all the provisions and silver I had on me, and even left her a token. If she needed anything later, she could come to Qingshan's stronghold to find me. First, to thank her for having stood up for me once. Second, to thank her for saving my mother's life during the chaos. When the chaos had just begun, I had once asked someone to bring word to my parents, telling them to flee quickly. I had also asked that person to bring 15 taels of silver as travel funds. Consider it my fulfillment of filial duty in this lifetime. That person came back with an expression full of indignation. Your whole family is truly no good. They took the silver and immediately turned their faces. They wouldn't even listen to your message, and drove me out. They even said that if you didn't give them another 35 taels, they'd report you to the magistrate's office for being unfilial. Fortunately, in the end, it was only your mother who chased after me to ask how you were doing. If not, I'd have cut them down right there. I did not hide this from Lu Chuan, just as this time he had not hidden from me that my mother had appeared in Taoyuan County. That night I asked him, Big Brother Chuan, was this trip down the mountain only to let me meet Mother? He nodded. Han, you've seen it for yourself. The officials do nothing but sit idle and collect their salary. The bailiffs in the city have barricaded themselves in the yamen. We've been hiding for 3 months. We can't keep hiding forever. I understood. He was about to do something great. The thought made my whole body tremble. In the end, I couldn't hold back and asked what I had wanted to know for months. Big Brother Chuan, who are you, really? From the moment we entered Qingshan's stronghold, I had vaguely sensed that Lu Chuan was not an ordinary person. I had seen escort guards and mountain bandits clash like water and fire, unable to share the same sky, yet Lu Chuan had gone from escort guard to mountain bandit. That was hard to believe of any ordinary escort guard. At first I had deceived myself, thinking he was simply more clever than most. But today, when he had stood before the chief and said, once we take these dozen or so surrounding cities, there will be reinforcements. I could no longer deceive myself, yet I was only a girl from a small country town. The grandest thing I had ever done in my life was standing up to face my own family and reporting Duong Shi to the magistrate's office. My knowledge was only enough to recognize that Lu Chuan was not like an ordinary man. That night I finally could not help tearing away the thin veil that stood between us. Lu Chuan heard me ask and stood frozen, motionless beside the table. He let out a bitter laugh. That's right, who am I, really? He said, Han, wait until everything is settled. Then I'll explain everything to you. At that point, if you despise me, I'll let you go. But right now the world is in chaos. I dare not let you leave my side. I grew only more suspicious. But the suspicion did not last long. The entire Qingshan stronghold marched out. The newly appointed officials, hearing of the mountain bandit uprising, rushed to the front line to report to Prince Xian, hoping to borrow his military might to deal with us. We took Taoyuan County as our center and one by one seized the yamen offices of several surrounding towns. No one had expected that in this time of chaos, there was still a nest of mountain bandits hiding in the mountains. Taoyuan County, situated at a vital transportation junction, directly severed Prince Xian's supply lines. Prince Xian dispatched a small force to suppress the uprising. When that force arrived, they found the yamen entirely deserted. By then, we had already switched to the waterways and set course straight for another of Prince Xian's supply lines. By the time Prince Xian realized something was wrong, we had already destroyed 3 of his supply convoys, but by then, he no longer had the strength to deal with us. The emperor dispatched troops to suppress the rebel prince. The commander was the great general who pacifies the nation, the legendary war god renowned throughout the realm. Prince Xian had schemed for many years, but beset by internal troubles and external threats, he finally showed signs of decay and defeat. In the end, the great general who pacifies the nation carried the head of Prince Xian and pacified the realm, marching straight to An Prefecture. An Prefecture's commandery governor surrendered his official seal and opened the city gates wide to welcome the great general into the prefecture. Lu Chuan led more than 100 people from Qingshan's stronghold and was amnestied by the court. The great general who pacifies the nation personally received them and wished to meet the leader of our group. The chief, overjoyed, shaved his beard clean, put on a new robe, and strode into the command tent, only to be sent flying out with a single kick. The general lifted the tent flap angrily. "Don't let that fool in to bother me again. Otherwise, throw this whole gang of mountain bandits into the prison for me." The chief, aggrieved, ultimately betrayed Lu Chuan. I grabbed anxiously at Lu Chuan's sleeve, afraid the great general would settle scores later. After all, we truly had been mountain bandits. Lu Chuan patted my hand and said quietly, "Don't worry, he won't do anything to me." I could only stand in the crowd at a distance and watch Lu Chuan step forward, bow, and pay his respects to the great general. "It has been a long time since we last met, so..." "Lu Shan, you have indeed survived." The general's voice rang out like thunder. I heard it clearly. "It was Shan, not Lu Chuan," Lu Chuan replied. "What is general speaking of? Your young nephew does not understand. Lu Shan is dead, dead on the road of exile. Under this sky now, there is only Lu Chuan." The great general stared fixedly at Lu Chuan, his gaze unfathomable. Then he laughed aloud. "Summon this young man into my tent for a few cups of wine tonight." The crowd cheered in celebration, only I stood there, stunned, like a sleepwalker. Lu Shan. I dimly recalled that when I was small, in a medical hall, I had overheard people gossiping about a corruption case that had shaken the imperial court. The case was so large that even this remote Taoyuan county had heard of it. The official in question had been beheaded in public, and all remaining family members were sentenced to exile. How much silver had been embezzled, how many people had died because of it, I could no longer remember. But one sentence had been branded into my memory: that wicked official still had a son. What was his name again? It seems it was Lu Shan, only 12 years old, and already a junior Shiozai. Lu Chuan confessed everything to me. He was indeed Lu Shan. His father was indeed the corrupt official I had heard of as a child. He said, formally, without confusion, that he was the son of a convicted criminal. If not for my wet nurse risking her life to protect me, I would have died on the road of exile along with the uncles and cousins long ago. I was nothing but a lowly wretch clinging to life. It is laughable. The first time she met me, she declared me a hero. "Han, with my background, don't expect to accomplish anything of worth in this lifetime. If you want to leave, I won't stop you." I bowed my head and listened. "I heard that your father had harmed many people." I saw the hand hanging at his side slowly clench into a fist, then slowly go slack. Powerless. Yes, he embezzled disaster relief funds. "So, Big Brother Chuan," I raised my head and met his gaze, watching the color slowly drain from his face. I looked into his eyes and said, "When I was small, I wanted to uphold justice and act as a knight-errant. If I were still a naive child, you would certainly be the villain in my eyes, simply because you had a wicked father." The light in his eyes began to fade. He pressed his lips together and said nothing. I continued, "But you and I have been through so much together. I know you are not wicked. We entered the mountain stronghold in such a time of chaos, yet you never once collected a single tribute from any village, nor descended to plunder the common people. If you were truly wicked, you would not have helped the pacification forces. After all, only if Prince Xian succeeded could you have had any chance of avenging your family's honor. Isn't that right?" I took his hand. "Our big brother Chuan carries great ambitions in his heart. That is something I cannot match. How can he not be counted as a hero?" Lu Chuan slowly knelt, taking my hand and pressing it to his forehead. "Han, you truly are." I suddenly panicked. "This is bad. The great general has already recognized you. He won't send you into exile again, will he?" "But we destroyed so many of Prince Xian's plans. Even without merit, there is still the hardship we've endured." Lu Chuan didn't reply. I leaned over to look at him. "You're not crying, are you?" Suddenly I was met with a pair of eyes sparkling like the spring breeze. Lu Chuan stood, pulled me into his arms. "Our Han is truly clever. Rest assured, General will not make things difficult for me." After drinking wine with the great general who pacifies the nation, Lu Chuan was sent flying out of the command tent with a single kick. Out. 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 "Brat, get out. This general is declaring your amnesty, not recruiting you. Consider yourself never seen by this general. You may go wherever you please." Lu Chuan took my hand and smiled. "Many thanks, General." The great general reached a hand out from inside the tent and fumbled to press a sheaf of silver notes into Lu Chuan's palm. "Back then, your father went wrong. I could not stop him, and have always blamed myself. Now all that's left of that generation is you. Spend it frugally, there won't be any more." In my heart I had just thought what a good man the general was, when a shrill cry pierced the air. "Lord Lu! Lord Lu, save your concubine!" I turned my head, only to see a contingent of soldiers escorting captured mountain bandits to forced labor. Among them, a woman in a mask was struggling to break free and lunging toward us. She ran and called out, "Concubine is Lord's wife." She was registered at the magistrate's office. Concubine was captured by mountain bandits, and has finally found Lord again. The great general stuck his head out to watch the spectacle. He let out a cold laugh. "Brat, isn't the girl beside you your wife?" "And who is this one?" Lu Chuan's face was expressionless. "Leftover filth from the Tian household." The general waved his hand. Duangshi thought she was being summoned and had not yet let the smile fade from her lips before she collapsed. The soldiers sent an arrow straight into her, turning her into a porcupine. Before absolute power, all petty schemes became nothing but a laughingstock. Before departing, we borrowed 2 horses from the general's stable. Our last act as bandits. And so we returned to Taoyuan County, reunited with the elder aunt from next door, and helped to rebuild the house for my mother. My mother could not wait for the day of peace and order to return. Elder aunt recounted that one day, my mother had suddenly sobered up. Unable to accept that my father and little brother had become food for others, she had gone home and taken her own life. Fuwei Escort Bureau had settled in the north. We went to visit them. The chief manager of the bureau, hearing that we had once been mountain bandits, was so furious his hair stood on end. Lady Chu stood to one side and laughed merrily. "There are things even more infuriating than that. people who are mountain bandits can still lead their followers to surrender to the court and live comfortably on a salary. Getting angry too early, after placating the chief manager as we departed, Lady Chu asked, "So where are you headed next? The sky is vast and the earth broad. The mountains deep and the rivers long. The knight-errant, the cicada's lament, and the embroidering flower lady, prepared to wander the Jianghu." Side story. Lu Chuan, when I was 12 years old, my household's possessions were confiscated. They said my father had embezzled disaster relief funds, causing many people to die. I did not believe it. The day before, my father had still been teaching me, in conducting oneself, one must be upright and benevolent. But the evidence lay right before my eyes. I could not disbelieve it. When they came to arrest us, my father still said, "Sean, my son, your father has gone down the wrong road." My mother could not endure the shock and followed my father in death that same night. In one night, my family was shattered. The magistrate's office came to take us away for exile. I knew that far too many people wanted our lives. They would not let us arrive at the place of exile in peace. My wet nurse protected me in fleeing from the convoy of exiles. She begged me to live well, but with no home left, how was I to live? Before, when my father had been alive, I had never once worried about money or food. I only needed to study the sages and classics. When I had time, I could also learn a few moves of martial arts from Uncle the General. But now, the Lu family had collapsed. I was not even equal to a stray dog along the road, no household registration, no travel papers. I could only hide in the mountains like a feral creature, eating whatever I found, and still having to guard against wild boars and mountain wolves. In the end, I was starving to the point of madness and came down from the mountain. I encountered a caravan of horses that had stopped to make camp and cook rice. I couldn't restrain myself and crept over to steal pastries from beside the fire. Only when I was pinned to the ground did I realize it was an escort bureau caravan. From then on, I began working for the escort bureau. I changed my name to Lu Chuan. My father had wanted me to be like a mountain, to become a man of great stature who stands upright under heaven. But now I only wanted to be like a river, to crawl along the surface of the earth and survive however I could. They said I was ruthless in my methods, that when encountering bandits who robbed the cargo, I would fight to the death. In truth, my heart was deeply conflicted. I wanted to live, but held no great attachment to this life. I only thought, if one day I die at the hands of mountain bandits, at least it won't betray the trust the bureau chief placed in me. And so, from apprentice I gradually rose to escort guard, and then to escort chief, when I was 21. Matchmakers pestered me until I nearly went mad. They had no other choice either. They said that if I didn't marry, the matchmakers would be flogged alongside me. The law was written very clearly. A man past 20 who had not established a family would not only be flogged but would also have to pay increased taxes. She said the butcher Duong's family also had a daughter. If she didn't marry either, she'd have to pay extra taxes too, and her father had said that as long as the man was a man, it was enough. Then she changed her tone, only that the girl's reputation is a bit tarnished. It seems there was an unsavory incident at the needlework shop before. But the girl herself is very beautiful. If not for that matter, you'd have no chance at an opportunity this good. A tarnished reputation. What a coincidence. My reputation was not so good either. I said, "All right, go ahead and make the arrangements." Butcher Duong sent. What was it? Wasn't it supposed to be the girl who would be married off to avoid paying extra taxes? How did she send a little girl instead, who keeps calling me brother-in-law, until my head aches? Ah, so Duongshi had fled the marriage. And the one who arrived here was Duong Han, the younger sister who couldn't bear to let her parents suffer. I also couldn't bring myself to tell her what her parents had actually been calculating all along. Even the elder daughter, who had been doted upon from childhood, now that her reputation was tainted and they feared they might not be able to marry her off and would have to pay extra taxes, they could still casually find someone and push her onto the wedding palanquin, even if Duong Han disagreed. Her parents had 100 ways to force her up. But this little girl opened her mouth and called me a hero. What a fool. If she knew who my father was, let's see if she'd still dare say that. Duong Han had poor health, but she did not want to live by relying on others. Each month when she received her pocket money, she kept half for emergencies. The other half she donated to the charitable hall. I teased her that she had too much money and didn't know what to do with it. She said, "A heroine cannot see children suffering from hunger and do nothing." I thought of the days when I had been a refugee, starving. Not having food to eat was truly miserable. From then on, I stopped teasing her. On days when I didn't go out on escort missions, I sat in the shade of a tree and watched her play with a kitten, and suddenly felt that life like this was so blissful it seemed unreal. I wanted to live these days well with her, but she was single-minded and straightforward. Would she be able to accept someone like me? I am the son of a criminal. That stain can never be washed clean. So be it, let me wait until the day I die on an escort road, and then she can find someone better. Don't let me ruin her life. The first time I met Duong, she was at the gate of the escort bureau. She came saying she was there to seek shelter with Han. The moment she appeared, her gaze never left me, fixed on me as it swiveled around. This woman's intentions were too difficult to fathom. But even as the man of the house, I could not unilaterally decide what concerned Han. This was Han's blood sister. Whether to keep her or not was ultimately Han's decision. Fortunately, though Han was soft-hearted toward her sister, she was still clear-headed enough to decide that she could stay until after the new year and then leave. I had many times warned Han that I disliked Duongshi, telling her to quickly drive her away. If I had known what would come next, I should have found a way to deal with Duongshi earlier. I truly deserved to die for my negligence. I hadn't expected Duongshi to find a loophole in the law. The escort guard quickly chased after her. With just a few words he explained clearly everything that had happened in Taoyuan County. I only felt an uncontrollable fury in my heart. Duongshi dared to do this. The little girl I treated like a treasure had been tormented by her until she nearly died. She knew clearly that Han's health had not yet recovered, and still she deliberately calculated against her. The fire at the county yamen, that was set by me. And the small courtyard, that too was burned by me. Duongshi's life is so great she didn't even burn to death. I didn't want Han to know because I didn't want her to feel psychological pressure. Some things, letting me carry them is enough. But there was no longer time to deal with Duongshi. I had to quickly take Han away. Prince Xian's ambitions were too great. He and the emperor had completely fallen out. I feared that before long, the two brothers would settle their score with weapons. The chief of the stronghold was also a person of bitter fate. He too had been forced by his circumstances to go up the mountain and become a bandit. His parents had both died in the Great Famine 10 years before. Not just his parents, all the people who had followed him and risen in the stronghold were also orphans. The disaster relief silver embezzled by my father had originally belonged to them. Even if this was a sin incurred by my father, I still could not help but feel a gnawing guilt. Being a mountain bandit would sooner or later result in the court's cleansing. I had to think of a way to find a path to survival for them. The mistake my father made had to be borne and corrected by someone. The guts of this little girl are too large by far. The chief was right to have given her that medicine. I asked her whether she had any regrets. She pounced on me like a wolf cub, biting my lip, fierce, direct, genuine, wholehearted. That is her. That is my little girl. In this lifetime, I will not let her leave me again. I had heard that this time the emperor was dispatching Uncle the General to crush Prince Xian's farce. It seemed the end was near. But my identity was probably impossible to conceal any longer. She seemed to have already sensed something was not right. Uncle the General must have known I hadn't died, for if the escorting party had been deliberately searching for me, I could never have hidden for so long. Certainly someone behind the scenes had helped me, making Lu Shan truly die on the road of exile. But when Uncle opened his mouth and called my real name, I could no longer keep the secret. I had thought it through carefully. If she did not need me, I would keep my distance from her, but no ghost or demon would be able to harm her. But she understood me. When I was young, I had learned how to conduct myself, how to be an official. Everything I learned was for the aspiration of serving the world and the people. My father had embezzled relief funds, but he had taught me to think of the people. I had survived to this day, and she had called me a hero. Now I only want to be her hero alone. I don't want the name, the Cicada's Lament, so I became the Embroidering Flower Lady. Fine then, I looked at her. The person sitting on the horse turned her head and smiled at me, the smile brilliant as the dawn light. The road ahead is long. Mountains high, waters flowing. The heroine, the Cicada's Lament. I thank you for your willingness to wander the Jianghu by my side. End. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.